I recently acquired a plane. Now to me this is quite surprising because whilst in the early 1980s I used to fly radio controlled gliders, mostly slope soaring but a little bit of thermal soaring as well, I never transitioned into powered flight. And in fact I haven't really flown very much since the mid to late 80s. So of course my flying skills are very much, well, they need a lot of encouragement. So I went out and I bought this, a Hobbyzone Sport Cub S. I've flown it, I flew it quite successfully. I've had a lot of crashes, but that was all due to my inexperience and basically my doing silly things like flying in my garden, which is relatively big but also has lots of trees around and fence posts and fences and things to crash into. But in so doing I learned a lot about the plane, how the plane works, and I have a lot of criticisms as well as being overly very happy with the performance once she's in the air. Now let's go through the things that I did when I first bought her. And the first thing was to cover the wings, the leading edge of the wings, with tape, clear tape. Why? Because these wings are quite delicate. They're made of foam, the whole plane is made of foam, and when you crash, as you can see there, if you look closely, that little bit there, there's quite a ding there which happened in the first day or so. Secondly, because of a number of crashes, the nose took a really big beating. And in so doing, it smashed the top a bit and the motor came loose on 4 or 5 different occasions. Mainly through just landing and nosediving. Not good. The mounting for the motor is pretty basic. It's secured only underneath. There's no securing on the top. And that means that if when it lands and it gets a pressure from the below, it tends to unseat it. So as a result, having taken the whole top off, 4 or 5 times, I decided that this wasn't worthwhile doing, so I cut along here, where you see this green tape. I cut along there and along the sides, and now I have a hatch where I can lift this off and I can repair the engine mount, reseat the engine a lot more easily. This tape is electrical tape and it's fairly easily removable. There's also a lot of sellotape underneath there for strengthening. Right, the next thing was trim. The trim adjustment on the tail is with these little jinks. Now, what I've got on here is not the original. You see this little U bend here? That is all we have to make the adjustment. And to be honest with you, it's not adequate. In addition, this is 2 pieces, so you can remove the tail, and the 2 pieces are only held together with shrink tubing. And it was possible to move this end piece in and out, and in fact every time you had a hard landing, you had to reset the trim because that did slip. So what do? Well, I've put hot glue on the join on that side. On this side I hadn't put hot glue on it, and I actually lost a piece, so I manufactured my own with a little bit of wire that I managed to scrounge from somewhere. So that's, I think, a big disadvantage. But anyway, now, at least when I've got the trim reasonably good, and the rudder looks a bit weird. That's because this top bit got bent, and whilst I sellotaped it together, it looks as if it's off, but actually that rudder is quite carefully centered. We've had a few other little prangs which I've secured with tape. Now the last thing I found, flying, it was tail heavy. Now with the balance point where the book recommends it, which is balancing on this spar which goes all the way through the wheel, without a nose weight. Let's take this nose weight off. Without a nose weight, she was very tail heavy. So let's try and get my fingernails onto the balance point, and there you can see, I can't balance it. Now, okay, I've got a little bit more weight behind because of all the sellotape I've been using, which certainly didn't help. But even when she was pristine, she was tail heavy. So I had to put some nose weight on. Now my first flight was quite successful, but she needed some nose weight to penetrate. So what I've done is I have here a little weight, which is, I think it's a 5 gram metal weight. And I can put that either farther forward or farther back. I'm putting it on, for the moment, on canopy there because I was flying in slightly lighter air, so I wanted a neutral balance point. When I was flying in heavier winds, more than 5 miles an hour, then I was putting the nose weight right near the front. That meant that she could penetrate a lot better, and you'll see in the little video that I did that she wasn't penetrating very well at all, and I was having to hold a lot of down in order to get any movement. So, would I recommend it as a beginner plane? Absolutely. I've hardly taken it off from the beginner mode. The reason being that when I did try taking it off beginner mode, I found that she took a nosedive. Now that was probably down to me for not getting the trim right. When I was trimming it in beginner mode, which is not a good idea because beginner mode obviously auto trims itself. So what I should have been doing was trimming it in advanced mode. Now in the setup, let's put this aside for 1 second. In the recommended setup for bind and fly version, it does not suggest that you change the sound. Now you can very easily by going into the menus. So we go into the system setup, yes, and then spoken flight mode. Enable that, right? Flight mode 1, I changed to beginner mode. I'll demonstrate with sound, and flight mode 1.
Experienced mode.
That's the top one.
Intermediate mode.
That's the second one.
Beginner mode.
That's the first one. And that's much better than just having mode 1, mode 2 and mode 3. The other thing I did, which is not in the recommended, was to put on this switch here at the back. I had that throttle cut.
Throttle cut off. Throttle cut on.
And that means that I can, now with the throttle cut on, the engine won't run, so I can have the battery put in and I can play around with the plane in the knowledge that the propeller is not going to turn if I do something silly. So let's fire the plane up and I'll show you what I do. So you take a battery, you match up the red spot on the cable here. There's a red spot if you have a look. See, you have a red spot there. and you line that red spot up with the red spot on the battery. It doesn't matter at this stage how you hold the plane, because the plane does not try and zeroize itself until you put it level. Now, I noticed with the amount of Velcro that was on the plane, the battery kept on coming off on hard landings. So I put a double set of Velcro on there, and on my spare batteries I've got Velcro on the whole length of the battery. Okay, so that's noise was the system setting itself. So now let's test.
Throttle cut off.
There we go. I've got a warning set on my throttle, which I'm going to have to take off. Now, having started the throttle and started the engine, the safe mode is now active. And as I rotate the plane, so the ailerons and the elevator operate. The amount of elevator movement is very, very small. The amount of elevator movement that we get manually is a lot more. Right, if I go off safe mode, I go to advanced mode. I'm now getting a more positive elevator movement. The ailerons are pretty good. You notice that if I'm going left, there's the right aileron goes less than the left aileron, so we get more dip on this and slightly less lift on this wing, and vice versa. Rudder is quite responsive. You get a lot of movement. Whoops, there's it. I thought. And that's where you see it's good to have the throttle cut off. So the throttle is now off. Must get rid of that. So now I can play around with the rudder without worrying that I'm going to start flying away. So as you see, everything is not necessarily that straightforward. Well, that's it, I think, for now. I may come back with another video later on. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment, like, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please subscribe. And I'll see you again in the next video. Bye.